The format for today is informal and relaxed. Questions for our real-world leader have been submitted by students and will be asked by our student moderators. Jonathan Bilodeau is a Bachelor of Business Administration finance student and current NAIT Student Association president. Melissa Yurdega completed her NAIT business degree this past spring and is pursuing her accounting designation in conjunction with her work at KPMG. We are proud to partner with the Chartered Professional Accountants on this event and are extremely grateful for their ongoing sponsorship. Representing today, the CPA today, we welcome Ruth McHugh. Ruth is the Executive Director, Corporate Services and Office Accountability for the Office of the Auditor General of Alberta and co-chair of the Alberta Accountants Unification Agency. Before her election as co-chair, Ruth served 2 consecutive terms as board chair for CMA Alberta. Ruth represented Alberta as the CMA on the CMA Council of Chairs, also serving a term as vice chair of the National Council of Chairs, as well as other governance roles within the accounting profession. From the beginning, Ruth has taken a strong leadership position in advancing unification of the accounting profession in our province and across the country. In 2011, Ruth received the FCMA designation for her distinguished service to her fellow CMAs and the accounting profession in Canada. Please join me in welcoming Ruth McHugh.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor to be here today and to be sharing in this tremendous occasion. And I actually got to meet Mr. Shaw, so I'm pretty excited. Anyway, this isn't about you, Mr. Shaw. This is about Dr. Glenn Feltham. So I'm here to introduce Glenn. Glenn was appointed President and CEO of NAIT in 2011. Dr. Feltham has a long and distinguished academic background. After 2 undergraduate degrees, one from the University of Alberta and one from the University of Montana, Dr. Feltham completed an MBA, also from the University of Montana. Following that, he went on to complete an LLB at the Faculty of Law at Queen's University and later a PhD with a major in taxation and minor in finance from the School of Accountancy, University of Waterloo. He is a designated certified management accountant, a fellow of the Society of Management Accountants of Canada, and was formerly enrolled as a barrister and solicitor of the Law Society of Alberta and served as president of the Canadian Academic Accounting Association. What an illustrious academic career, my goodness. Born and raised in southern Alberta, Dr. Feltham believes in the essential role of NAIT as a polytechnic to strengthen the Alberta and Canadian economies through hands-on technology-based education and applied research in partnership with industry. Dr. Feltham promotes NAIT's competitive advantage of relevance and responsiveness and its 4 educational pillars: science, technology and the environment, health, and trades and business. Dr. Feltham promotes NAIT's competitive advantage everywhere he goes. In fact, he is known to refer to himself as NAIT's cheerleader-in-chief. So please welcome and cheer on the cheerleader, Dr. Glenn Feltham.
Well, thank you very much, Ruth. Well, what a special day this is to have J.R. Shaw here with us and to give our students, the business leaders of tomorrow, really what is a wonderful opportunity. As a relevant and responsive polytechnic, NAIT understands that leadership in the real world requires education for the real world. If you're fortunate enough to be successful, you're fortunate enough to share it. What a great motto to live by. J.R. Shaw has elevated the bar for leadership and giving back to community. To list as many accomplishments, awards, and accolades, well, it would seriously cut into the time we want to listen to J.R. on. Suffice it to say, JR, well, he's a leader extraordinaire, a visionary, and a man of humility who genuinely cares about community. No one knows this better than NAIT. JR had a profound impact on NAIT, serving as the chair of our Board of Governors from 1990 to 1997. I did notice someone walk into the room a few minutes back that I do want to recognize as well, and that is the new chair of our board, Brent Heshe, has joined us. So, Brent, welcome. But I do think it's most fitting that our School of Business is named after, well, such an amazing business leader. Please join me in welcoming J.R. Shaw and our student moderators, NAIT BBA graduate Melissa Yerdiga, and the president of NAIT Students Association, Jonathan Bilodeau. J.R., Jonathan, and Melissa, the floor is yours.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Good. All right.
Everyone hear me?
Perfect.
What about the old guy?
There it is. All right. So I think we're about ready to go. First off, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's been kind of a dream of mine to meet you after coming to school here for so long and seeing your name on the side of the building where I go. So this is awesome. So first question, how would you describe your leadership style?
Well, there's a lot of different styles on leadership, and you can be a part of the team. And I remember when I first come out of university in 1958, my dad says, you're going to Hamilton to live, and you're going to manage the plant, and you're going to learn the business. So, hi June. How do you manage the plant and learn the business, and how do you get into everybody's head, and how do you get to realize their knowledge, what they have, that I can do something better in my life. But I'd worked in the pipe coating business and the pipeline business every summer, but that doesn't really give you a broad section of it. So my dad was a pipeline contractor. He believed in coating pipe in a factory, and that's what we were doing there in Hamilton, and we have done in Edmonton, et cetera, all across Canada and even around the world now. But, you know, here you come back, all these people much more knowledgeable, much more informed and knowing everything what's going on. Now, how am I going to manage and learn? So what I did, I started doing anything and everything at the plant. I was rolling pipe, unloading pipe, doing whatever it took, cutting the ends back for the welds, and being a part of the team, and yet not be a threat to them, and yet learn from them as you go, so you can contribute to the operation long term. So I got to their trust. I got to be a team player. I got to learn, and you know, it took me about 1.5 years, and then it took off, and we started growing the business, and it grew ever since that. So, you know, I guess being with people and being a team player. And
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, perfect. So the second question is, what leaders have inspired you, and what were their characteristics?
what?
What were their characteristics?
And who inspired me?
Who has?
Oh, well, my dad, right off the bat. You know, you got to have a mentor in life, and my dad was that person. He was in the Second World War, came back. He and his brother had a farm and a flour mill. And my dad, I think, wanted the flour mill. I think my uncle wanted the flour mill. They drew straws, and my dad got the farm. And so, and I grew up in a 90-acre farm outside of southwest of Sarnia, Ontario, and that's where we lived. But he became a trucker. He became doing things. I remember one of the things that he did. He was the first person that I know of to double-deck hauling pigs or whatever else to Toronto, and Toronto was called Hogtown at the time. And so he had one layer and a platform in there for a second layer. And that was really early on, and those things didn't really happen. I think my dad also realized that the roads weren't as good as they should be. So as the ships went up into Lake Superior, et cetera, all the way up there, he would contract with them to bring back gravel. If they hauled coal or iron ore or whatever else they hauled back gravel, and he'd put it on the side of the docks and spread it on the roads. So he became a contractor every place and so forth. And you know, he is one person that has inspired me all the way along to do a better job and to just be a team player. And he was my mentor, and he made sure that with the many things that I've learned from him, I became to where I am today. So he's the one person that stands at number one.
My dad too.
Yeah, that's great. So JR, what is the primary role of a leader?
Wow. Who asked that question? Well, you know, you need to gain the trust of everybody around you. And you know, when I started the Western Canada in the pipe coating business, I started in Edmonton, in Edmonton here in cable TV. And, you know, I guess if you got to be a people person, you got to be like the people you're around, you got to trust the people that's around you, you got to really hire the best people and kind of have some excitement and some cheerleading going on and leadership. I often
No technical difficulty. It's okay.
I guess I'm moving my arm a little too much. Am I still on?
Yeah.
You know, I guess what you do is that you get people ready to be a part of it, but you got to also encourage them. But I think the one thing I was going to say, you got to have a vision of an eagle and the work ethics of a plow horse. And so, you know, you got to work hard. You know, you got to be at first at the job. And if I need to be at work at 8 o'clock, if I'm there at 8 o'clock, I'm late. And if I'm there at 7:30 or a quarter after 7, you know, I'm there on time. You got to be the first there to want to work. You got to be there on top of it. And you don't be the first one to leave at night. So, you know, no matter what level of work you have, you got to be very responsible for your actions, what other people are doing, and you set the example is the biggest thing. You set the tempo. You are there, and people are watching you more and more all the time to see what you're doing. If you're sloughing off, they're sloughing off. Right. If you leave early to go golfing, they're going to leave early to go golfing or leave early. And so you got to set the example.
Right. Great.
All right, this is a long one. So, oftentimes followers, people who write direct reports, or other business professionals, they are aware that a leader has power to influence their day-to-day work and overall career path. So there may be reluctance to give their leaders open and honest feedback. So for you, how do you know if you truly are actually being a good leader?
Well, the biggest problem in leading lots of time is that people think knowledge is power. And if I keep the knowledge to myself, I got all the power. And that is absolutely wrong. You know, you got to share. The more information you share, the more broad and more power you get. And then when you hire people around you, you got to have them with the right training, the right education, the right attitude, can-do, teamwork, everything else, all those qualities that need to be in people. Now, when you get that feedback, you know, you got to be able to filter out certain things. But if you have people around you that are better than you, my dad always used to say to me, he says, you can't be everything to to everybody. But if you need an accountant, you get a good accountant. If you need a good lawyer, you hire the best lawyer you can find, et cetera, all the way through. So, you know, it's those people. If it's a good salesperson, it's a good whoever. You hire the best people that want to be a team player. It's like those horses that come out of St. Louis, the Budweiser horses. They're all in step. And if you have a team that's in step, you're also going to be able to accomplish a lot more. And, you know, if they're out of step or not together. And so you got to have an organization that everybody kind of buys into it. And yet, you know, that's not easy to do. And you do take chances. And lots of times, it doesn't always work out. And so if it doesn't work out, then that person should work someplace else that is more in tune with what they want to do or what they can do and whatever else. But you got to hire top-notch people. And, you know, it's just when we started the company here. You know, how did I get involved in NAIT? I got involved in NAIT because we were hiring television people for our cable company, and we were having technicians trained for our installation, et cetera, on the construction side and on the operation side. So you do get involved in organizations outside, but you're hiring qualified people, and NAIT's always done that. They've always been there.
Great. So how would you say that you've influenced employees to follow your strategic vision within your organization?
You kind of get on, if you're on business, you're on a treadmill. Mm-hmm. And you know, you don't get off that treadmill when it's going at 100 miles an hour, and you kind of got it going. And I don't know how you influence people. It just seems to be a natural thing if they buy into what the goal of the company is and what the overall goal is. But you know, you still got to be a team player. And you know, you got to be a good listener. Mm-hmm. And I've always learned that you can't hear when you're talking all the time. And so you need to listen to everybody else around you. And you got to be a good listener and hear what they've got to say. And that is not the best quality I have in my life, but I work at it, you know. But if you listen to them and you got their input and they're putting information into there and they're being a part of the team, it's just like going and playing baseball or somebody else. If somebody else hits all the home runs and you don't do much, you know, you don't feel part of the team. So you got to make everybody feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. You got to sell them on what your vision is and have a vision. And you know, you got to get up in the morning, and when you get up in the morning, these are some of the things I want to accomplish. And nowadays, with at my age, I write down every time at night some of the things I want to do tomorrow morning. Mm-hmm. And then I get up in the morning, you wake up and you say, what did I think of that last night? And what did I think of this and that and so forth? I have most of it down there. So I got something to get me started and the things you want to accomplish. Because I want to get up and I want to be able to contribute and I want to be able to do the things I do. So I think if you engulf your team around you in a huge way, mm-hmm. to buy into where the company's going, where you're going, and everybody's going, you're going to have them all on your team.
Great advice. Yeah.
I agree. Definitely when the whole team has the same vision going towards the same direction, it definitely works a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, how has success and/or failure shaped you as a leader?
Well, we all want to be successful. But that's not always the case in life, being successful. You know, I've always loved television. My dad always loved show business, and I guess that's part of it. Although in his day, in show business was more movies and theaters and drive-in theaters and so forth, and television became more a part of that. But, you know, you have an idea, and the idea we had when I moved to Edmonton every place I lived in Ontario, every place I lived at university or wherever else, I always had the American 3+1. I moved to Edmonton here, and I only got CBC English and French. I only had CTV, was just starting up, and I didn't have enough choice. And so I tried to get visionary on, you know, if I wanted it, wouldn't other people want it? And so that was the real reason for starting cable and being involved in cable. And, you know, failures and successes. I left a successful company that I built a career on in pipe coating from graduating and even in summer work, and then move out here in 62. And then my brother and I felt, look, the pipe coating business is going to change. And some things did change as we dreamed it would or thought it would, and other things didn't change. So, you know, you're not, the glass isn't always half empty or always half full, and you're not always right in these things, so you adjust as you go. So then I thought, well, you know, we needed to diversify the pipe coating because there was some dark clouds over it. And so then we went out and said, well, if we're going to diversify the business, what are we going to diversify into? And of course, my view was to bring in more television choice, that I had enjoyed living along the border, and everyone else enjoyed living along the border, whether you lived in Vancouver or Lethbridge or any place else close to a U.S. major city. And so then I started working at bringing in television signals to Edmonton. And that was in '66. I went into Louis Durocher's office here in town, McQuaig Durocher law firm, and I said to Louis, I wanted to go into the cable television business. And he says, I never heard of it. What is it? And so, you know, it wasn't popular here, wasn't known here. And so I thought, well, this is what I want to do. So we formed the company, and we started doing whatever we did. And it was 2 years of doing spinning your wheels. Nobody would listen to you in Ottawa. We made presentations to Ernest Manning at the time and to the government, and I was talking to anybody that would listen to me. And it wasn't until about 1968 that Pierre Trudeau brought in the Broadcasting Act. And so the Broadcasting Act came into being in '68, and Pierre Junot was the chairman of that, and one of the first things he says, we were not bringing any distant signals and non-Canadian signals in by any technical means into any place in Canada. So that meant that Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, etc., would not be enjoying what you did if you lived along the border. And I kept saying, well, I'm not a second-class citizen. I want the same as everybody has in Vancouver and Toronto, etc. And so, you know, here you're working on, you know, from success to something you dream about, and maybe it'll come to a reality in decision making. And so then it's from '68 to '70, still another 2 years. So that's 4 years. And in fact, to give you an idea, it was 5.5 years since '66 that we first hooked up our first subscriber in Sherwood Park. And so 5.5 years to follow some kind of a dream to bring in choice. And so along the way, when Juno said, well, here's a failure, we're not going to business. I can also tell you one other thing, that my brother and I bought a small cable company in Woodstock and Ingersoll, Ontario in 1968. And the person that we bought his interest was owned London Life. His whole family was a big law firm in London, Ontario. And at the closing, he says to me, let me tell you a few things. He says, cable television is nothing more than a passing fad. You know, real estate and buildings, etc., is where the real value is. And he says, and furthermore, the federal government will never allow you to bring in distant signals into Edmonton. So you remember when Moses wrote on the rock? all that went right across my forehead and into my brain. And I've never, ever forgot that cable television was going to be nothing more than a passing fad. But what choice did I have but to continue to move forward? So, you know, you get bumps along the way, total failures and so forth. And then again, in 1970, the CRTC finally said, you can renew your application for cable television for Edmonton, and you can ask for 1 and 1. 1 plus 1 meant PBS and one of the US networks. And so here again, a big decision. You know, you got so many decisions coming along, and some of those really direct you where you're going later on, whether it's good or bad or yes or no. And so we had to decide, and we said, well, what about our friends that's in the cable TV business in Vancouver and Toronto? And they said, not enough. You got to have the whole bouquet of, and so, well, that's not an option. The CRTC has said what it's going to be. And so finally, amongst ourselves, we said, if we get a license, more will come. And we did not have the experience of the baseball field in the cornfields of Iowa. You build it and they'll come. But we said to ourselves, if we get a license, more will come. And it did. So I've yacked on here too long. I can't remember what the question was. And I'm not sure I answered the question.
You did.
It was just a short answer.
So JR, this question, it's really, I'm very curious to see your answer because it's something I think is really important. So let me ask you, what are the most important values and ethics that a leader can demonstrate?
Wow. Well, first of all, you got to be honest.
Yep.
And you got to be truthful. And you know, I'll never forget, while I was trying to work on being a licensee in the cable television business for the city of Edmonton, I went to a hearing in Moncton, and this is in about 1969. The CRTC had just been set up and so forth. And this is a little side story. They were at the hearing. I was lobbying them at all times to allow us to do what we wanted to do. But this one person was a radio operator in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. He was a family-run business. He was doing things that he wasn't supposed to do, and his license was up for renewal. And when he came before the commission, and early on, this was very early on in the hearings, the lawyer for the CRTC, his name was Goldberg, and he'd gone through Yarmouth, and he knew exactly what this person and his family were doing in suppressing the news. And this guy made his presentation, and when this lawyer was through with him, he was as red as the reddest part on my sock here, and his face, and he just left that table and turned around and walked out of that room so fast. And I said to myself, I will never, ever lie to this commission, and I'll always tell the truth, and always tell the knowledge that I have at the time. But I found out from time to time that you had to go back and correct yourself or adjust a little bit, because the facts at that time were not always the facts as you moved on further. Right. So I don't know. I just think you got to be truthful. You got to be open. You got to be honest. You got to be knowledgeable. You just, you know, I don't know what makes a good leader. Totally. I've been very successful, and you know, but I've been successful mainly because of the people around me, not because of necessarily myself. And you know, you make a little bit of luck yourself, but you get lucky too. And you know, we're the small person in the telecommunications and cable field today. And I always remember going to the hockey games here in Edmonton, and Wayne Gretzky wasn't the biggest, but you always try to figure out where the puck's, he always knew where the puck's going, so you try to figure out where business is going, you try to figure out where the future is, and so, you know, visionary and so forth, and, you know, I don't know what else to say on the quality of leadership, because I hope I can exemplify, even like somebody says, I think it was Ruth on the interview, you know, what about think of the school named after you, and I thought, it's daunting. I just can't believe that. And she had to tell me a few times to say the words, welcome to my school, the J.R. Shaw School of Business, you know. And it took me a long time to say that, because, you know, it just doesn't come naturally.
Right.
And I'm not an I person. I hope I'm a we person, and that means a team player.
Right. Very true.
So can you guys hear me? So apparently, well, you know,
That might be me.
the green button's on, so I'll just talk loud.
There you go.
So that'll help fix everything. All right. So in what circumstances is it most difficult to be a good leader? And what advice would you give to leaders who want to do well in those circumstances?
Oh. Boy, you know, you run into some situations that you really don't know how to act, and I'm not sure this one's going to answer your question, Melissa, or not. But when we got our license for Edmonton, we had there were 7 applications. 5 was from the private sector, and 2 were from the city of Edmonton. One by Edmonton Telephone, and the other one by the city of Edmonton for a public company. And so here we are, going for the license. And I often ask somebody at the CRTC if they'd look back, this is years later, how do we become one of the licensees for Edmonton along with QCTV? And, you know, they did look back, and there was no reason other than you got the license that they could find. And so why the commission picked QCTV and Capital Cable, I have no idea, but I would have liked to know it. But I can tell you this, that the city of Edmonton was very disappointed that they did not get the license. And so it took us a long time to negotiate the pole attachment, or using the system here in Edmonton to string our lines up and put our cables there. So we had to go back to the commission and get Sherwood Park and St. Albert. And so then we could start there, and we started there in '71. And then we finally made an agreement with the city. And so then the city, it worked out to get us started in the city for both our companies. And then at the end of that 20-year agreement, the city said to us, you cannot make fiber optics in the city. Is that my speaker doing all that?
Just do this.
What am I doing? Lean it up? Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Up like that. Something's going wrong. Got the bad ear here or something. Is that better? In any case, I'm not used to this fancy equipment. And so when the 20 years was up, the city said, no, you can't lay fiber optics in the city. You have to lay coaxial cable like you've always been doing. I'll speak up a little bit to make sure that you can hear me if my mic isn't quite right. And so we worked for 3 to 4 years with the city of Edmonton, trying to lay and do the same the things that we could do in BC, we could do in Saskatchewan, we could do in Manitoba, we could do in Ontario, we could do in Nova Scotia, but they said no. And they said no, and I could tell you a story after story. So they really, our headquarters was in Edmonton, and we couldn't do the things that we had to do for our company to be successful. And this was, I lived in Edmonton longer than I have any place else in my life. I lived 32 years in Edmonton. And so for me to even think of anything other than not to do it, but Jan Reimer and the Edmonton telephone people were so adamant that you cannot do it. And so one of the things we did, and I'll just give you a story, if we got enough time for a story?
For you? Absolutely.
So out near Sherwood Park on the highway there is a big tower called Ray Reid. And all our microwave signals were coming into that way, and then we were broadcasting them via either cable or a microwave, a broadband microwave. And so we said to ourselves, we wanted to lay a fiber optics into Bonnie Doon. So the county had no problem. We get to the city's boundaries, and they said, absolutely not. And so then what choice have we got? So then we go back, and there's a tower behind the fire hall in Bonnie Doon. And we said we wanted to put then a tower there, and we'll bring in a microwave signal to there, and then go from there. And they said, no, you can't do that because we own that tower. So they were doing everything to slow us down and not let us do fiber and not let us expand our service. So then the next thing we did is there's on that traffic circle at the north end of Bonnie Doon, there's a yellow apartment building. And we got permission to go onto the roof of that. And then the city said to us, and this was what really blew me out of the seat, they said, no, you can't go there. We own the airways. And I thought, my gosh, we're going no place with this company. So then I went to the board along the way here and give them time that these are the problems that we have. And at the time, we owned half of Edmonton and all of Calgary. And we had Vancouver, and we could have gone back to Toronto. So we looked at staying in Edmonton, moving to Calgary, moving to Vancouver for our head office, or moving to Toronto. And what was happening to us in the company is that most of our executives would leave by the Muni and come back to the International, or vice versa, and it was just really, really confusing. But there was a number of issues. But the biggest issue was that the city would not let us do the business that we had to do to expand it. And if our head office is going to be here, that's where we need to do most of our work, because that's where all our leadership is. So I remember going to Calgary and seeing Ralph Klein at the time, and laid out all the maps and all the charts and all the territory we had. And he says, you know, I'm not going to like what you're going to say. And I think, well, you will to a degree, but not totally. And I said, well, I come from Ontario. I'm not going back to Ontario. I don't think they work hard enough in British Columbia. That was a bad statement. I withdraw that. And I love Edmonton, and I've lived there and been very successful, but we're going to move our head office to Calgary because of what the city of Edmonton is doing to us. And so making a decision here that changed the direction of our company, we moved to, Ralph Klein says, well, good for Calgary, good for Alberta, and bad for Edmonton. And you know, we didn't leave here on our own accord. We were pushed out of the city. And unfortunately, and I'll answer any questions on this subject too if we get to the stage. So you know, we made a decision there, and 4 of our key directors were from Edmonton, and they couldn't argue with what was happening to us. So in any case, that is one of the things that I've always regretted, that our destination was controlled by other people that forced us to make a decision that changed the direction of our company. Whether it's for good or bad, who knows? But it's we stayed in Western Canada, and we have so many employees, and other than cellular phone, we're equal to Rogers in size, and I'm proud of that. And because otherwise, if we hadn't have kept control of the company, we'd be just a division of somebody else from Eastern Canada. Sorry, both.
No worries.
Great. So what is the best leadership-related advice that you've ever received? And if you want, we could probably switch your mic out if you like.
Use this one. Is that better?
Perfect.
The best advice I've ever had?
Yeah, best leadership-related advice that you've ever received.
Well, I think I've received a lot of leadership advice. I can't think of an item right off the bat, but you know, you got to be humble. You got to be sincere. You got to be kind. You got to relate. You need to have relationships, and it's networking, and it's like going to school. You get to have friends at school. In business, I remember in business that I learned along the way that going to the CRTC for so many years since 1968, I got to learn by observation mainly of who's going to sell and who isn't going to sell by what they say or their criticism of the CRTC. When they were criticizing the CRTC, you knew they're going to sell. And you just had to kind of adjust along the way to become connected with all these people. And the number of acquisitions that we've made over the years has been at least 75. And they're mostly ma and pop operations. The nice thing about the broadcasting industry in Canada, it's all been family and families involved, and that's really neat to be involved. No matter what company we can almost mention today, maybe they're not as family oriented today as they once were, but they were at one time. And so, you know, it's whether I got not a good example of what advice I got, but the example that I can tell you is that you observe and listen and watch people around you, and it helps you be able to go in whatever direction you need to go.
Great, great.
I'll just talk really loud. It's just a quick line. Can you describe to us like how competitive you are?
Well, you want to be competitive, but you don't want to be in people's faces. And so, you know, I guess when we built our company, we got our first customer in 1971 in Sherwood Park, and then we grew from there. We kind of eventually just grew our base in the 70s in Edmonton and the greater Edmonton area, except that we did buy Kelowna and Penticton, and that came through a relationship that I'd built attending CRTC hearings. And so you need to be with people that you relate to and want to do business with you. And what was the question again? Oh, competitive. Well, so how would you grow the company? If you have good people around you and you're not aggressive and you're not ticking people off and they want to deal with you, and so, you know, you are competitive in that sense. And I just can't imagine. The other day I signed a number of letters to people that are 30-year employees, 35-year employees, and 40-year employees. And, you know, it amazed me, and it really made me realize that, you know, we're not just a yesterday company, it's a long term. So it's people, but you got to have the good people around you. When I was out doing deals in Toronto or wherever else it was, or Halifax or Vancouver, you got to have a good, strong base. And so, you know, I was competitive. I didn't know where cable was going right off the bat, other than choice. I didn't know we'd be into the breadth of company that we are today. But you got to
have some vision of where you're going. So I guess, if you say Ted Rogers is a very competitive person in his lifetime, other than the cellular business, we're the same size in cable. In the overall business, we're bigger than he is in programming. And so not a lot of difference. And if you called him aggressive, I guess we're aggressive, but you're not in people's faces that make them not want to deal with you. So I guess if you got to say you went from knowing every employee that you had to today knowing just a few because you got so many employees, it's success along the way someplace, but I guess there's a certain spirit of competition there, and I used to love it when the Oilers always won.
Very nice. So you're very active in supporting organizations like NAIT and the Mazankowski Alberta Heart Institute, just to name a few off the long list. Why is it that you support these organizations?
It's a little daunting to be around NAIT today to see my name where it is, and I'm kind of used to it because, having the name named after yourself, we did have a name called Capital Cable at one time, but there was a group in Vancouver Island that wouldn't allow us to use the name Capital. And I remember talking to John Poole, and they'd just moved from Poole Construction to PCL, and here we are going from Capital Cable to Shaw Cable, and then he says your name's going to be in every household and so forth. So it is daunting that way. I think of this South Learning Center, if I got the name close or here, that when I was chairman here, Dr. Such and I went out and we raised money, private money, to build this auditorium. And I didn't remember it was quite as big as this. And the labs that's here, the bookstore, and all the other amenities in this area here, all privately. And this was, I think, at NAIT, the first time that no government money has been involved in this function, and it really made me good. But then I come here and I see, oh, this is a Shaw Theater, And so, you give back, not you want your name on things, because, I do try to do a lot of things that I don't want the name around because I think you're going to get a backlash at that sometime, and that's maybe just my feeling, but I do feel that way. I think if you're successful because you have a product and you look after your customers. Your customers are your number one reason you're successful, is that you've done something right that they want to buy your product. And so the more successful you are, the more you give back, and giving back to NAIT or giving back to Mazankowski. And it's not just because I got involved in Mazankowski, I got involved in the Stollery before that. And Children's Hospital, and raised money for it, and to see little kids, and I've stood with the gown and looked into their chest, and their heart has just gone flat, and they're onto the machine. And I remember Dr. Ivan Rebecca saying, well, bring up the heart. I want to show the trainee a few points here. And, up comes the heart, and it was like a pancake, and now it's operating. And he says, if we sow the wrong things here, this child will need a pacemaker the rest of his life. And so when you're involved in people's lives and you see the good coming out of it, and you've done something to help it, and I was a part with Bill Comrie and Dennis Urker and so many of us for the Stollery. And then it became natural for the Mazankowski. It wasn't called the Mazankowski then. It was going to be the Alberta Heart Institute or whatever else. But one day, my friend Don Mazankowski had a heart attack in New Zealand and in Auckland, and he didn't sleep all night, and he came down in the morning, and then he looked so bad. Everybody says, you got to go to the doctor. the ambulance came and got him, knew exactly what was happening to him, slipped an aspirin in his mouth to kind of thin out his blood a little bit, took him to the hospital, and he was there for some weeks and months, and we were starting to raise money for the Mazikowski. And one night I said, well, we gotta have this place named after Don Mazikowski, because there isn't many Albertans that's done more for this area and for Canada and for the world than Don Mazikowski, because he was Mr. Minister of everything in the government when in Brian Mulroney's government, and he just did it all. And so I remember calling Don someplace along the way because we couldn't go too far, and I remember asking the committee here in Edmonton, well, how much is it going to cost to have this name? Because there was other names being bandied around. And finally, he says a big number, and it was more than $10 million. And so I said to him, well, what did the Stollery cost? No, that doesn't matter. The Stollery was something different. But they wouldn't tell me because it was much less at the time. And so I took on, if I got Maz's permission, to raise the money for the naming of it. And so I called Don Mazikowski, and no, he says, no, I don't want to do that. There's more worthy people than me. And so I talked to him again, and he was the same tune. So I finally talked to him the third time, and if you remember someplace along the way when Rogers did the negative option in Vancouver to sell people where they didn't kind of have a choice, and I said, well, I pulled a negative option on Don, and I says, well, if you won't say yes, you won't say no. And so he was kind of silent. So we just moved forward, and because of his good name and because of the importance of it, we raised enough money, and I raised, luckily, $1 million for every letter in his name to go to the naming of the Mazikowski Alberta Heart Institute. And we raised, and it's credit to Bill Comrie and to all the other team, that we raised enough money that the government put more money to it and did the 2 top floors, and now they're being occupied. So it's really good. So the more successful you are, the more you give back, and you can give back whether you're successful or not. Or it isn't just money. It could be time and effort and energy and commitment on a personal basis. So it's all that kind of commitment giving back. Look at all the people that I'm sure work around NAIT here, doing the things that they do, and it's not money, it's doing what you can do yourself. And so any way you can give back, that's the important thing, and that's what we wanted to do, is give back.
That's great.
Awesome. I think too, a lot, you say it's often hard or just weird to see like J.R. Shaw School of Business, but you've given so much to us and to the community with what you've done, that it's like the gift to you, like it's in recognition of what you've given to everyone else. So it's just amazing to hear your story. So I just had to add that. A little ad lib there. But so do you see generational differences in leadership styles or approaches throughout your lifetime?
Oh, if you're talking about business changing and things changing, you can look at the music industry and see how that has changed. I can remember when I was at school, I used to have a couple of fingers working a typewriter every now and then. Now I got a couple of thumbs working the BlackBerry, etc. And just how things have changed over the time. I remember looking at a television screen that was mostly snow, but I loved it because I could see something on there, whatever it was. Nowadays, it's so clear and so crisp, and you're going from the big ones to the small ones, the kids walking around with all kinds of head down and doing things. And it's not just kids, whether you're crossing the street or walking down the hallways here. It's the technology and life is moving so quickly. And I know life in particular is moving so fast. Maybe it's because of my age, and maybe it's because of your time. And you ever want to think about how much time you have in life? Just look to insurance companies or whoever else it is and say, well, what is life expectancy? So let's say it's 83, and you put down tape there, and so for every inch is a year. And so you write, you got it up to 83 or 85 inches, and then you look back and say, well, how old am I? And how much is behind me and how much is before me? And you know, even as time moves on, things become much quicker. And you know, I just cannot believe how many changes have happened in our lives. And then as you get older, the time becomes shorter and quicker all the time. Now, I'm not sure I answered your question, but I just, in the industry that I'm in, I don't know everything that's going on. I just generally know the concept of how it's going. I know that the young people don't watch television much anymore. They're watching it, you know, on their tablets. And, you know, this is why we've taken Shaw Communications and are going to Shaw Go or Global Go, and you saw CTV, Bell saying that the other day. So we'll have enough Wi-Fi access points in cities, etc., that you can take that any place you want to go, so you can take it with you. And so, you know, the customer is the customer, and you got to go with the trends. And you know, when you get as old as me, I have a tough time just generally keeping up, let alone keeping up. And that's why we have so many young people working in our industry and our company that are so smart, and I just love them.
Excellent. So we're running a little short on time, so I think we have 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap her up. So from a leadership perspective, how do you balance quantitative metrics like financial results and the qualitative metrics like employee engagement when you're measuring success?
Well, the one thing you got to have financial success. You know, you got to have your debt in line. You can't have more debt than you can afford to have. You can't have that in your household. You can't have that in whatever business you're talking about. And we see the countries in Europe that's got more debt than they can afford to have. And so you got to keep that in check, even as a personal person or in a family and beyond that. Then how do you relate to your employees and so forth, and treating them and so forth? I always believe that you treat people like you want to be treated yourself, and you don't take out of there more than needs to be taken, can be taken out of there, and that your employees don't take out more than needs to be. But we all need to have financial success, satisfaction, and so forth. And you know, it's the things that you do and the programs that you have. And I think that we have in our company as good a program as there is in rewarding the employee, looking after the employee, being successful with the employee, being just being with them at every opportunity you got. And you know, I used to know every one of them personally, and I wish I could do that today, but with so many employees, that is not possible. But you hope somebody else is doing that throughout the HR division and all the way down through. And you know, you're concerned about their personal health, you're concerned about their kids and their kids' education and so forth. Because you know, knowledge, once you get that knowledge and that understanding, and wherever you get it, in school or you get it in real life, it goes with you forever, and it's easy to carry around. So you always make sure that your employee is rewarded in all ways, and that they don't have to have that problem and worry about it, and that the company is successful. Because I often go into room such as this, and if it's full and so forth. And I said, are you all employees? And they kind of say, yeah. And I said, you get paid too? And so, yeah, I just have a tough time at times really thinking and realizing how big the company's got with the number of employees. Does that answer your question, or close?
Okay, this is the final one. So, what advice would you give for balancing your career and other activities?
Well, first of all, you got to have a stable home relationship. And, in life, there's always a lot of give and take. And sometimes it's more give than take. It's a two-way street, particularly let's talk about a household. And, I married Carol, my wife, in 1956, so if you want to do the math, you can do that. And it hasn't always been easy for either one of us, but whatever's happened, we've stuck it out and made it happen. And so, it's in life you want to be successful, and you've got to have a good home relationship, and it's got to start at the house. And then what was the main point?
What advice would you give to balance your career and personal life?
Well, then, you can't be at work all the time and have a household either. And so you got to have enough time, and you got to have enough time for your family and enough time for your kids. And, but I was trying to say there that, life is not always easy, and never will be easy. And you do the things that need to be done and balance it out in work, play, and home life. But make sure that home life is solid, because that's where everything starts, and that's the fundamental part of our society, and whether it's in whatever country it is in the world here. So, we just need to make sure that you're not working all the time, and you're not sloughing off all the time. And so I do know the harder you work, the luckier you get. So, and maybe you have to work at the marriage, and you get more lucky, or you work at life. And that really didn't come out right. I've got to stop on that one. Because my dad always told me, when you're digging and it's getting darker, you're going the wrong direction, and I was going the wrong direction there.
Well, thank you very much. That is all the time that we've got for questions. I can't imagine where the time has gone, but I know I'm going home to share with my wife the great advice I just received. Ladies and gentlemen, it is customary on occasions such as this to offer thanks to your guest and present a suitably significant gift. But really, what could we present to J.R. Shaw? We turn to history for inspiration. In 1964, the first president of NAIT Students Association was presented with an ookpik by the Department of Northern Affairs and National Resources. Ookpik is the Inuit word for a snowy owl. Being the most northerly institute in Canada, the Student Association at the time thought this was a perfect mascot for NAIT. The ook today is an enduring symbol and reflects the heart and soul of our institution and our greater NAIT community. JR, we are proud to present you with an ook. This ookpik is one of a kind. It was respectfully handcrafted using traditional materials and tools by NAIT's Inuit elder, Peggy Richardson, and signed by her. Peggy used to make and sell ookpiks in the Arctic when she was a child. On behalf of the 2,500 students currently enrolled in the J.R. Shaw School of Business, thank you for sharing leadership in the real world with us today. In conclusion, thank you to our moderators, Melissa and Jonathan, our event planning team, volunteers, and our sponsor, the Chartered Professional Accountants. In addition, over the coming days on Shaw Cable 10 here in Edmonton, various interviews relating to this event will air on Go Edmonton. I hope that you have time now to join us for refreshments. I know we're committed to getting JR back to downtown Calgary by 6:30 tonight for a very special event on the charity side for Shaw Communications. And please take the time as well to enjoy the food outside the theater and to network. Good afternoon.